This is episode 119 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Jon Bombaci. Jon is the founder of Candor Realty. That is powered by FourPoints. He has decades of real estate investment and insurance experience. He's been involved in tons of real estate transactions on market, off market, for himself, for his agents. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to being here.
Yeah, this is a reset because we did try this last week and got bombarded by weird internet, but we're going to get it right this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate you spending the time and coming back. So tell me the first time that you thought of real estate as something that would bring you basically income in the future.
Long after I already owned investment.
Yeah, see that I remember us talking about this, but that's a really important point because we were saying I think that there are a lot of people who are homeowners or they even own one or two rental properties and they don't consider themselves investors. What held you back from thinking that you were already a real estate investor?
So I don't know. So I was doing the corporate thing. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I had a good job right out of school. I was focused on my W-2. I think it's all about intention. I didn't own real estate for income. I owned real estate because it made sense long-term, but all my bills and everything were paid from my W-2. Any income that was brought to the property just sat in the operating account for the property. I never took it. I never touched it. I never looked at it. That was part of, my retirement plan, but I wasn't an investor. I was living in one of the units and just let that do its thing while I focused on growing my career.
Oh, so your first purchase, was it a house hack or a single family?
My first two properties were house hacks. So I house hacked a 3-family at 22 years old, right out of school, really because I couldn't afford to buy anything else. I had a lot of debt. I couldn't buy a single family. I could buy a really crappy condo. But I could buy a nice 3-family in Connecticut because the income from the other two units essentially qualified. And then when I left the 3-family, I moved into a 2-family. But again, I thought of them as subsidizing my mortgage. I didn't really think of me as an investor. And then I kind of paused and someone was like, "Oh, you own 5 units. That makes you an investor." I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, that makes sense though. You're a nice person, but a bad landlord. And people think, I don't think I'm a good landlord either, but I'm the other way. I just don't want to deal with the conversations. I just don't want to, it's not my thing and I'll get annoyed. So to give them the best service, you also need to know the expectations. And sometimes when you're a nice landlord in the beginning, they can take a lot from you being nice, right? And that usually becomes the problem. Oh, that was my dad, oh, they haven't paid in 6 months, but they're really nice. Can you
Yeah,
get
but
the
where are
money?
they going to go, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it is fair. You want to be conscious as a landlord, like if something happens in someone's life. But again, a lot of times that property is paying the bills. So we would always say to tenants who are behind, you don't understand, sure, we have other money, but this property is supposed to pay for itself. So now when we're taking from a different property here, now our accounting's all messed up. So, where did you go from those two properties? And when, after you decided, wait, I think I am a real estate investor.
Yeah. So when I was 27, we were in a second house hack. I was living in Massachusetts. I was commuting 3 hours to Boston every day.
Okay.
And I lost my father, to cancer after a 4-year battle. And I was like, I can't do this for the next 30 years. I was in the finance world. I was into financial independence, Mr. Money Mustache, Early Retirement Stream, Bigger Pockets. I was binging all these podcasts on my commute. And I actually looked at my finances for the first time and said, "Hey, if I keep doing what I'm doing, I can retire in 10 years. And then I was like, but if I find a way to leverage through real estate, I could retire in 2 years.
Yeah.
And so I went that way. We bought 24 units in Northern New Hampshire over the course of 18 months. The day I closed on a 12 unit is the day I gave my 2 weeks notice. And when they asked me where I was going, what I was doing, and I explained to them what I was doing,
Yeah.
they decided that was going to be my last day.
Yeah. When you made that decision, did you start your brokerage then? Because we're going to talk about that. You opened your own brokerage that became investor friendly. When did that play a role, or, having a license play a role in your investing game?
Yeah. So I got my license probably 6 months before I left the corporate world. And again, it was kind of like a security thing where I was doing a couple of deals and I figured, hey, if I can do 6 deals a year and I have this rental income,
Yeah.
I'll be okay, right? I won't be I won't be ahead, but I won't be behind. And then when I left the corporate world, I met other agents that were actually bad agents. They knew what they were talking about. They were very analytical. They connected well with clients, but they couldn't sell in the single family in the condo world because they didn't have empathy. That wasn't their strength.
Right.
And so I introduced them to some of the clients I was working with house hackers and first time investors and those types of things. And they knocked it out of the frickin' park.
Yeah, because the
You know,
emotional attachment to the house is away, and it just doesn't work for some people. Some people are you're talking about investor-friendly agents focused on the
Mhm.
numbers, like, here's the trajectory, and that you can find the subset that really works there.
And that's what happened is I took these people that were interested in being agents, but they weren't good at it in the residential market, gave them a different clientele, and they were awesome. And that's when we kind of figured out like this is kind of a thing. And so I, grew from a solo agent to a, team of 3 to a team of 6. And then it just kind of grew. And now we're up to 35 agents. I started it in 2020. So it's only been a few years. We've got 35 investor focused agents. We're structured in like pods where we have team leaders. The team leaders have 5 or 6 agents that work for them. And we span 3 states now, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine.
I think real estate as a whole, especially on market, people feel like you own clients. It's like, have you guys heard of free will? I don't need buyer's agreements. I don't care. They can do what they want. It doesn't make any difference to me. Like, sure, if my best friend goes and uses someone else, I might feel offended for a second, but I probably did something to make him not want to use me in that situation. I'd rather look at myself. Is that how you feel as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't sign buyer agreements. We don't do any of that.
Same.
And I say to my agents, like, you need to provide value. You want them to want you, but also you can fire them if they're not listening to you.
Yeah.
And that's different than a lot of brokerages, I feel. And the other thing I tell them is you are not allowed to show somebody a house unless you know they ran the numbers on the house first. Because
Great.
otherwise you're not real estate investing, you're gambling. And you need them to prove to you that they know how to run the numbers. And you'll find out real quick when they send you a house and you're like, there's no
Yeah.
freaking way this works.
Right.
And I
Right.
always tell them to challenge and push back because you don't want to be showing someone a house that they haven't analyzed.
Yeah, I agree. Then you just end up wasting everybody's time. That's great advice. And for listeners, if you're a newer investor, we're talking about the agent side, but we're actually giving you advice about what to do and what not to do as an investor. Get your ducks in a row. When you have investors that are new come to you, what things do you want them to have in order besides what you just said? You want them to have run the numbers on the deal, but how prepped do you want them to invest before? And hopefully a lot of that comes from your meetups, I'm sure.